It started with a sound. Not a scream, not a crash, something quieter. A hurried, nervous laugh. It slipped through the cracked window of my own house as I was hauling 2 heavy bags of groceries up the driveway. I stopped, standing completely still under the gray swell of the afternoon clouds, one paper bag already slipping from my fingers. That laugh didn't belong to me. It didn't belong to anyone I should have been hearing inside my home. I dropped the groceries right there. Eggs exploded in the grass, milk bled out of its plastic container like some sick joke. I didn't even notice. I just moved quickly and quietly around the side of the house. I knew every creak of the porch steps, every place where the boards would betray me if I wasn't careful. I hovered outside the living room window, barely breathing. Inside, there she was. Melissa, curled up on the couch, legs draped lazily over the side, wearing that red sweater I bought her last Christmas. The one she had said made her feel too seen. Ironic. Her phone buzzed again on the coffee table. She grabbed it immediately, fumbling, grinning like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. I watched her thumb dart across the screen. She typed so fast she knocked over a half-empty wine glass. I leaned closer to the glass, squinting. The message she was sending wasn't to a friend. Wasn't about brunch or weekend plans. I caught just enough words to feel my stomach turn to lead. Hurry up, bring protection, and come over. He's finally out for 2 whole days. I can't wait. She didn't even flinch sending it. She threw her head back against the couch cushions and laughed again. A low, throaty sound that made me feel like a stranger trespassing on my own life. The world didn't slow down. It sped up. My pulse hammered against my temples as I backed away from the window, heart pounding in some weird, broken rhythm. I wanted to burst in, scream, confront, do something, but something colder held me still. I waited. I waited as a black car pulled up outside 20 minutes later, engine still running. I waited as she leapt up from the couch like a girl on Christmas morning, adjusting her hair, checking herself in the mirror, spraying perfume so thick I could smell it through the window. I waited as a man, tall, built like he lived at the gym, wearing a leather jacket, strolled up the steps like he belonged there. Melissa opened the door for him so quickly it almost hit the wall. She didn't hesitate. She didn't check the street. She didn't think. I saw her grab the collar of his jacket and pull him inside, giggling like some high school crush had just shown up. I heard the lock click behind them, and still I stood there, in the rain, soaked through to the skin. The groceries were a smashed mess somewhere behind me. The world tilted sideways, but I kept my feet, fists clenched at my sides. I should have barged in, right? Should have kicked the door off its hinges and demanded answers? That's what I always thought I'd do if something like this ever happened. But real life doesn't work like your imagination. Real betrayal doesn't look like a clean slice. It looks like 1,000 tiny cuts you only feel after the bleeding starts. I turned away and walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat, soaked, frozen, empty. I stared at the windshield wipers going back and forth without turning them on. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours, a lifetime maybe. One thing I knew for sure. This wasn't something we could talk our way through. This wasn't something an apology could fix. And somehow, the worst wasn't even over yet. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. I didn't go inside right away. I waited in the car until I saw that black car pull away 2 hours later, headlights cutting across the wet pavement like a blade. I watched Melissa at the door, hair messy, sweater gone, standing there barefoot, smiling lazily as she waved goodbye like they had just shared some innocent joke over coffee. My keys felt heavy in my hand as I stepped out. I walked up the driveway, my shoes splashing quietly through puddles. Melissa hadn't even bothered to close the door all the way. It hung open an inch, swinging slightly with each gust of wind. I pushed it open. She was halfway across the living room when she saw me. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't even look guilty. She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes. "Oh, you're back already," she said, voice flat, like I was the one who had done something wrong by being there. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall like she was bored. I stepped inside, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floor. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally, I asked, my voice scraping out like gravel, "Who was that?" She gave a tiny mocking smile. "A friend." The word hung between us like a slap. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I just stared at her. She laughed, actually laughed, and shook her head. "Don't act so dramatic, Jason. It's not what you think." I let out a slow breath. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From something hotter, something uglier. "Not what I think." I repeated, voice low. "I saw the message. I saw you let him in. I saw everything." Her eyes narrowed, the playful mask dropping. "So what? What do you want, a medal for being a peeping Tom? Maybe if you spent less time spying and more time being a man, I wouldn't have needed him." It hit like a punch. Sharp. Unfiltered. She meant every word. There it was. No apologies. No begging for forgiveness. Just pure, casual cruelty. I stepped closer, not to touch her, not to shout, but because if I stood still I thought I might collapse. "You disgust me," I said quietly. She shrugged. Actually shrugged. "You'll get over it." She turned away from me like I was an annoying commercial interrupting her favorite show. Walked right into the kitchen, bare feet slapping the floor, humming to herself. She grabbed a bottle of wine from the counter, popped the cork like it was any other night, and poured herself a full glass. I stood there, watching, something inside me finally snapping into cold, clear focus. This wasn't some mistake she regretted. This was a choice she was proud of. She sipped the wine, leaned her hip against the counter, and gave me a look so smug I wanted to tear the whole room apart just to erase it. "You're not going to do anything," she said, swirling the wine lazily. "You never do." And just like that, she turned her back on me. In that moment, I understood something I hadn't wanted to believe even when I saw her message. Even when I saw the man leave. Melissa didn't just betray me. She enjoyed it. And no matter what I thought I felt for her before, love, pain, loyalty, it all curdled into something sharp and final. I stepped out of the kitchen, grabbed my keys, and left. This time, the door slammed so hard behind me that the whole house shuddered. But it still wasn't over. Not even close. The air outside tasted metallic, thick with the promise of a storm that never quite broke. I didn't go far. I parked a few blocks away, engine idling, headlights off, fingers drumming restlessly on the steering wheel. Every muscle in my body was wired tight, but my mind was eerily calm. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing there's nothing left to fear once you fall. I should have driven away, left her behind like yesterday's garbage. But something gnawed at me, raw and merciless. I wasn't just angry. I needed to see how deep the rot went. I sat there for maybe 30 minutes before I saw another car pull into the driveway. Not the same guy. Someone else. This one was older, balding, dressed like he'd just come from a corporate meeting. He moved fast, checking his phone, barely looking around before slipping up to the door like a regular customer at some cheap motel. Melissa opened the door in a different outfit, this time a silk robe barely tied at the waist, and pulled him inside without a word. Another one. Another one. I almost laughed. A harsh, broken sound caught in my throat. Was I the only fool who didn't know? I slammed the gear into drive, but instead of speeding off, I circled back. I parked across the street under the shadow of a dead oak tree, engine off, hidden. Watching. Waiting. An hour later, the man left. Melissa didn't even bother to watch him go. She closed the door, turned off the porch light, and vanished into the house. I sat there until the clock on the dash blinked past midnight. My chest felt hollow, scraped clean. I wasn't just mourning her. I was mourning me, the version of myself that had built a whole life around a woman who had treated loyalty like a disposable napkin. And still, I wasn't done. I crept back toward the house, every step deliberate. I had no plan except a sick need to see her again, to stand face to face with the person she really was, no illusions left. The front door was locked now. I didn't knock. I didn't announce myself. I went around back, knowing the sliding glass door always stuck if you jiggled it just right, a secret only someone who truly lived there would know. I slipped inside, silent, a ghost walking the halls of his own funeral. I found her in the kitchen again, sitting at the counter, scrolling through her phone, lazily eating grapes one by one. She didn't hear me at first. She was too busy typing. Smirking. I stepped forward, my shoes wet against the tile. She looked up then. For a second, just one sharp, brilliant second, fear flashed across her face. But it was gone before I could even taste it. Instead, she smiled. A slow, pitying smile, like I was some stray dog who had followed her home and now needed to be kicked back into the street. "Jason," she said, voice syrupy sweet, "you're being pathetic." I stared at her, heart hammering, every nerve ending on fire. She tossed her phone onto the counter and crossed her arms, tilting her head like she was studying an insect under a glass. "You think this is new?" she said, voice dripping contempt. "You think tonight was the first time? God, you're even dumber than I thought." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. She pushed off the counter, walking slowly toward me, her bare feet silent on the tile. "You stopped matching a long time ago," she said, leaning in so close I could smell the wine on her breath. "You just didn't notice because you were too busy pretending everything was perfect." The final twist of the knife. Not just betrayal. Mockery. And still, her eyes dared me to do something about it. Hit her? Scream? Beg? I did none of those things. I smiled back. It wasn't the smile she expected. It wasn't kind. It wasn't broken. It was the smile of a man who had finally accepted the death of something he had once loved. Without a word, I turned, walked to the front door, and left it wide open behind me. Let the cold rain soak the floors. Let the neighbors see. Let the whole fake little world she had built collapse around her. This time I wasn't the one losing anything. She was. And she didn't even know it yet. I didn't sleep that night. I drove. Nowhere specific. Just kept moving. The highway signs blurred past in the dark, but my mind was crystal clear, or razor sharp. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't shocked or heartbroken or confused. I was locked in. Focused. Because hey race, what Melissa never understood, silence doesn't mean surrender. Distance doesn't mean defeat. And when a man loses everything, he becomes capable of anything. By morning, I was already in motion. I went back to my office, not to work. I walked in, nodded at the front desk girl like it was just another Monday, and made straight for my computer. I sat down and opened the shared drive folder where Melissa's name lived. She had been using my work laptop for weeks. She said hers was acting weird. I never questioned it. But she'd left trails. God, she'd left so many trails. Photos. Chats. Screenshots. Venmo transactions labeled with emojis she probably thought were clever. 3 different names. 3 different men. 3 different versions of her. The girl next door act for one. The wild, unpredictable tease for another. The polished, elegant intellectual for the third. Each man got a different performance. But all 3 thought they were the only one. I compiled everything. Every message, every appointment, every lie. It was all there. And that's when I realized something that made my skin crawl. She had been planning something. A folder titled Long-Term Options. Inside spreadsheets. Notes. Plans for a condo in Miami. Legal consultations. Estimated costs of living without me. She hadn't just cheated. She was trying to replace me before I even knew she was gone. This wasn't betrayal. It was demolition. Calculated. Cold. Strategic. I didn't say a word to anyone. Not my coworkers. Not my friends. Not even my brother, who always said she gave him bad gut feelings. I went home that afternoon and she was there. Wearing gym clothes, drinking a smoothie like nothing had ever happened. "Where've you been?" she asked, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Not worried. Not curious. Just annoyed I hadn't sent a text. "I went for a drive," I said calmly. She rolled her eyes again. That was her thing now, the eye roll. Her way of dismissing the world like it was all beneath her. "You can't keep storming out like a teenager every time you don't get your way," she said, sipping again. "It's exhausting." "I agree," I said, and walked past her. Into the bedroom. I packed a bag. Not all my things. Just the things that mattered. Birth certificate. Passport. Flash drive. My dad's watch. A worn-out paperback copy of East of Eden I'd read every year since college. She followed me in, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice edged now. The game was shifting, and she felt it. "Leaving," I said simply. "To where?" "Somewhere with less rot." That stopped her. She blinked. Once. But only once. Then she smiled. That same smug smile that had haunted me the past 2 days, and said, "Good, you'll be back." You always come crawling back once your pride wears off. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, walked right past her. No, I said at the door, turning halfway, meeting her eyes for the last time. This time, I'm not crawling. And the next time you see me, Melissa, it won't be in this house. What's that supposed to mean? You'll find out, I said. Check your inbox. And I left her there, barefoot again. But this time with fear creeping into the edges of her perfect little face. I got into the car, started the engine, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: clarity. I wasn't just walking away. I was turning the game around. Because she wanted a life without me? She was about to get one. But not the way she planned. And tomorrow morning, when she opens her email and finds copies of everything I discovered sent to each of those 3 men, her condo dreams and silky lies are going to collapse like the house of cards she built them on. Checkmate. Morning didn't come gently. It hit like a hammer. At 7:13 a.m., my phone started buzzing where it sat on the passenger seat next to me. I had barely slept, just enough to keep from losing my grip. The call was from a number I didn't recognize. Then another. Then another. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I already knew what was happening. The emails had gone out at 6 o'clock sharp, scheduled to hit all their inboxes at once. Screenshots, photos, detailed timelines. Each lover shown exactly how they had been played, not just by her lies, but by each other. Melissa's kingdom was crumbling in real time. By 8 a.m., I parked 2 streets over, leaned back in my seat, and watched the show unfold. First came the black car, the gym-built guy. He screeched into the driveway so fast he almost tore the side mirror off a neighbor's van. He hammered the door with both fists, shouting something I couldn't make out. Melissa appeared a few seconds later, hair messy, robe clutched around her like she was trying to physically hold her world together. She screamed back at him, tried to close the door. He shoved it open and followed her inside. For a second, I thought about intervening. But then I saw him throw something at the wall, a framed picture, maybe, and storm back out. He peeled away without looking back, tires screaming against the pavement. 10 minutes later, the balding corporate guy showed up. Different energy, quieter. He didn't even knock. Just stood on the porch staring at the house like he was looking at a grave. Melissa came out in jeans and a hoodie this time, trying to salvage her image. He said something. She said something back. He shook his head slowly. And then, without raising his voice, without even a visible trace of anger, he pulled a small black box from his jacket, dropped it on the ground, and walked away. A ring box. I didn't need to see inside to know what had just died between them. Melissa stared at it like it might explode. Then she dropped to her knees, scrambling to scoop it up, looking around frantically as if the neighbors might be watching. They were. I was. By 9:30, her phone started blowing up again. She stood in the middle of the front yard, barefoot on the cold concrete, shouting into her phone like she could claw her way out of the mess with pure volume. Then another twist. A woman showed up, mid-30s, sharp black heels clicking furiously against the driveway. Not just any woman, the gym guy's actual girlfriend, if the screaming match was anything to go by. They went at it right there. Full, raw, public meltdown. No fists, no hair-pulling, worse. Words. Deep, cutting, personal words that you don't recover from. Accusations I wouldn't repeat even if I could remember every detail. Neighbors started peeking through their windows. Someone across the street was filming. And Melissa was falling apart. The woman left her standing there. Mascara streaking down her cheeks. Robe sagging off one shoulder, clutching that stupid ring box like it was a life raft. I watched it all happen without blinking. Every second. Every collapse. Every moment where the walls of her life gave way under the weight of her own selfishness. But that wasn't the end. Not yet. Because Melissa still thought this was just about the men. She hadn't realized yet the house she lived in? Mine. The car she drove? Mine. The accounts she used to buy her secret plane tickets and luxury dates? Mine. And the next move? It wasn't going to be another email. It was going to be a personal visit. Today, I wasn't hiding. Today, I was coming through the front door. And this time, she would have to look me in the eye, not to lie, not to blame, not to bargain, but to watch everything she built crash down without a single hand reaching out to catch her. The sky hung heavy and low as I walked toward the house. No hesitation this time. No second-guessing. Just the deliberate, measured stride of a man who wasn't angry anymore, just finished. Melissa must have seen me through the window because by the time I reached the door, she was standing in the foyer, arms wrapped tightly around herself, face pale. For the first time since this all started, she looked small. Not fragile, no, Melissa wasn't fragile, but exposed. Vulnerable in a way that wasn't designed to manipulate. She didn't say anything as I stepped inside. I closed the door behind me, the click of the latch sounding like a judge's gavel sealing her fate. I dropped a manila envelope onto the coffee table between us. It landed with a heavy final thud. Inside, every document she forgot I still had access to. Deeds. Titles. Bank statements. Legal ownership. Proof that the foundation she thought was hers to stand on had always been mine. Melissa didn't touch it. She just stared at it like it might burst into flames. You thought you could replace me, I said, my voice so calm it scared even me. You thought you could build your next chapter before I noticed the ink was still wet on this one. She licked her lips, searching for something clever to say. Something to flip the script. Blame me, paint herself as the victim. But this wasn't the old dynamic anymore. There was no script to flip. This is still my house, I continued. My accounts. My name on every contract you signed while you were busy planning your little escape plan. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to grab the envelope and tear it apart with her bare hands. Instead, she forced a laugh high, brittle. So what? You're just gonna throw me out? Like I'm trash? I tilted my head slightly, studying her. No, I said. You did that yourself. I'm just taking out what's already rotting. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Words failed her. That never happened before. I gave you everything, I said quietly, stepping closer. And you turned around and gave it to the first guy who could bench press a couch. That hit her. Her chin jerked up, some of the old fire sparking in her eyes. Maybe if you were half the man he is, she started. I didn't let her finish. I leaned in so close she had no choice but to meet my gaze. If you really thought that, I said, voice low and razor sharp, you wouldn't have needed 3 different ones to fill the gap. That shut her up. Completely. The silence between us stretched until it was almost a living thing, clawing at the walls. Melissa finally reached for the envelope with trembling hands. She rifled through it quickly, panic rising with every paper she read. You can't, she started, but her voice broke. She swallowed hard. I already did, I said. Today, the utilities switched to my name only. Your cards? Frozen. The car? Towed by noon. Your access to the accounts? Gone. Your gym membership, your wine club, your little shopping spree habits? Cancelled. All of it. She stumbled back a step, catching herself against the side of the couch. It was the first time I'd seen her look genuinely afraid, not because someone caught her lying, not because she was ashamed, but because, for the first time in her life, the consequences had teeth. You can stay here, I added. For 2 weeks. Then the locksmiths come. Her face crumpled, a flash of real fear, real helplessness. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered. I shrugged, emotion so cold and simple it felt like the final nail in her coffin. Maybe call one of your friends, I said. Oh wait. Looks like you burned those bridges too. I didn't stay to watch her fall apart. There was nothing left for me to gain from her tears, her rage, her desperation. I walked out, left her standing in the ruins she built with her own hands. As I stepped into the fresh morning air, something inside me finally loosened. Not joy, not triumph, freedom. And this time, the door stayed open behind me, swinging hollow, the way a broken cage does when the bird it trapped finally finds the strength to fly away. The phone calls started the same afternoon. I ignored the first few, let them rattle uselessly against the silence I had finally earned. But Melissa wasn't built for silence. She thrived on attention, good or bad, and when she didn't get it, she turned desperate. By the 5th missed call, she switched tactics. Texts flooded my phone, one after another, frantic and contradictory. Please, can we just talk? You're being immature. This isn't who you are. You're throwing away everything we built. I'm sorry. You're going to regret this. I still love you. If you don't answer, I'll tell everyone you were abusive. There it was. The truth of her character stripped bare. No apology. No real remorse. Just a machine cycling through whatever tactic she thought might bring me back into orbit around her collapsing star. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded every threatening message to my lawyer, who I had retained 2 days ago before she even knew I was serious. Every threat, every twisted attempt at guilt or manipulation neatly documented and timestamped. Melissa didn't know it yet, but every word she sent was another link in the chain wrapping tighter around her. By evening, she showed up in person. I saw her through the peephole of my rented apartment, a temporary place I'd picked up just hours after walking out. She looked like a wreck. Hair tangled, sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder, no makeup, sneakers untied. A far cry from the polished goddess act she used to wear like armor. She knocked once. Twice. 3 times. Jason, she called out, voice cracking. Please, just open the door. I just need to talk. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to yell. I didn't move. Didn't make a sound. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, listening to the girl on the other side of the door scramble for footholds that no longer existed. I was scared, okay? She said, voice trembling now. I felt like you didn't see me anymore. I didn't know how to tell you. I made mistakes. But you made mistakes too. There it was. The twist. Always dragging someone else down with her, making her fall look like a shared stumble. I still love you, she whispered. We can fix this. We can go back. A long silence stretched between us. And then, so quiet I almost missed it, her voice dropped to something darker. If you don't, Jason, if you keep doing this, you're going to regret it. You don't want to see what happens when people turn on you. I almost laughed. The same woman who begged for forgiveness a minute ago now threatened me because the apology didn't work. I stayed silent. Finally, after what felt like an hour but was probably only a few minutes, she pounded her fist once against the door in frustration and stormed off down the hall. I waited another 10 minutes before looking outside. The hall was empty. I sat down, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the contact list. There was still one more step to secure my freedom completely, something I had been preparing quietly ever since I uncovered the depths of her betrayal. Tomorrow morning, Melissa would wake up to discover her worst nightmare. She wasn't just losing the house. She wasn't just losing the money. She wasn't just losing the comfort she had built by stepping on the back of my trust. She was going to lose her reputation. Because while she had been busy crafting her stories, building her little web of lies, she forgot something important. People listen when you tell the truth early, before the lies have time to grow. Tomorrow, I would walk into the meeting with our mutual friends. The ones she thought she had charmed, the ones she thought would automatically side with her, and I would show them everything. Everything. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because it was time for her to finally live in the world she created. No more pretending, no more masks, no more saving face. Just reality, stripped raw and ugly, exactly the way she served it to me. And when she reached out again, because I knew she would find that she wasn't talking to the man she used to break. She was talking to a ghost. The next morning the sky broke open, heavy rain smashing the streets like fists. It suited the day. It suited what was coming. I pulled into the coffee shop parking lot 10 minutes early. I didn't rush inside. I sat there, engine running, staring at the fogged windows. My heart wasn't pounding. My hands weren't shaking. Those things had burned out of me days ago. Melissa's world wasn't going to fall because I screamed louder. It was going to fall because I stayed silent and showed the truth. At 9 o'clock sharp, I stepped inside. The place smelled like burnt espresso and cheap pastries. A low hum of conversations filled the air. I spotted them immediately. 6 of our closest friends gathered around a cluster of tables jammed together in the corner. Melissa wasn't here yet. Good. Perfect. They saw me and half of them smiled instinctively, before the expressions cracked a little when they noticed the hard set of my jaw, the dark focus in my eyes. I didn't waste time. I pulled out my laptop, set it on the table, opened the folder labeled The Truth. For a second, no one spoke. No one moved. Then I started. Not yelling, not blaming, just showing. The messages, the emails, The Venmo payments for private lessons and wellness retreats. The screenshots from her burner accounts where she juggled lies so casually it made me sick to reread them. The timeline. The silence at that table grew thicker with every new page, every new piece of evidence. Faces changed. Smiles died. Hands gripped coffee cups tighter. And when it was done, when every lie had been peeled back to the bone, I leaned back in my chair and finally spoke. "I'm not here to ask you to pick sides," I said. "I'm here to tell you that the woman you thought you knew never existed. And whatever she says when she shows up, understand it's another story. Another performance. This time, I'm just giving you a chance to see the real one." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, almost too quiet to hear, someone muttered, "Jesus Christ." Another shook his head slowly, pressing his fingers against his forehead like he was trying to stop his brain from tearing itself apart. I closed the laptop, slid it back into my bag, and stood. "That's all I came for," I said. "Do whatever you want with it." I was halfway to the door when she arrived. Melissa burst in, soaked from the rain, mascara bleeding down her cheeks, clothes clinging to her skin. She saw me instantly. Saw the group. Saw the tension crackling like a live wire in the air. Her steps faltered. She knew. She knew. She plastered a smile on her face anyway, the same smile she had used 100 times before to wriggle out of tight spots. "Jason," she called out, fake sweet, her voice cutting across the cafe like nails on glass. "Wait. Don't run away again. We need to." One of the girls at the table, the one who used to defend Melissa at every turn, stood up sharply, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "No," she said, voice hard as steel. "We don't need anything from you." Melissa froze. Blinking. Processing. She turned to another friend, eyes wide, reaching out. "Jen, come on. You know me. You know I." Jen looked at her like she was something she scraped off the bottom of her shoe. "You used me to lie to him," she said coldly. "You dragged me into it without even telling me the truth. You think anyone's gonna believe a word you say now?" Melissa's mouth opened and closed uselessly. The entire cafe was watching now. Whispers rippling like waves against the glass. She stumbled back a step, clutching her soaking jacket tighter around her as if it could protect her from the reality crashing down. She looked at me one last time, real, pure hatred twisting her beautiful face into something ugly and unfamiliar. But I was already out the door, walking into the rain, letting it soak through my jacket, my hair, my skin. Cleansing. Final. Melissa wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything. And for once, it had nothing to do with what I did and everything to do with who she truly was. The rain didn't stop all day. By the time I got back to my apartment, the world outside looked like it was drowning. Perfect, I thought. Let it drown. I was dry. I was free. I left my wet jacket draped over the back of a chair and sat down heavily on the couch. Phone silent. Laptop shut. No noise. No movement. Should have felt like peace. But I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Melissa wasn't the type to let the world close around her without throwing one last punch. She was cornered now, desperate. Feral. And desperate people don't retreat. They lash out. It happened just before midnight. A knock at the door. Sharp. Fast. Urgent. I didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at the door like it was something already dead. Another knock. Then her voice. "Jason. Jason, open the door, please. Just for a minute. I swear, I'm not here to fight." A minute passed. 2. I stayed still. Then she spoke again. Lower this time, trembling. "I'm sorry. I was stupid. I was scared. I ruined everything. I know that now. I don't expect you to forgive me, but please, just talk to me. Please." The desperation in her voice would have broken the old me. The man who once believed that love meant always staying, always fixing, always forgiving. But that man didn't live here anymore. Still, I stood and walked slowly to the door. Not to open it. Just to stand on the other side. I could hear her breathing. Fast. Shaky. "You win, okay?" She whispered through the door. "You got what you wanted. You ruined me. Everyone hates me now. They won't even answer my calls." A bitter little laugh bubbled up through her throat. "I bet you're real proud of yourself." I didn't respond. I didn't move. I let the silence suffocate her. After a moment, her voice sharpened, brittle and cutting, "But you know what? They'll get over it. They always do. People forget. People move on. And you, she pressed her forehead to the door. I could feel the hollow knock of it vibrating under my palm. You'll be alone, Jason. Alone in your little apartment. Alone with your pride and your revenge. And one day, you're gonna wish you hadn't pushed away the only person who ever really loved you. It was almost poetic, if it wasn't so completely pathetic. I leaned in just close enough for my words to carry. Still calm, still cold. You never loved me, I said. You loved what I gave you. You loved being adored, worshipped, supported. You loved what I made you feel about yourself. But you never loved me. Not once. There was a silence so heavy it pressed into my chest. For a moment, I thought maybe she was finally going to break. Finally going to admit it. Finally going to fall apart completely. Instead, she laughed. Soft, bitter, poisoned. Fine, she spat. Fine. You're right. I used you. Are you happy now? Her voice climbed, shaking harder with every word. I used you because you made it easy. Because you believed everything I said. Because you were pathetic enough to think a woman like me could ever actually want a man like you. The last words hung there, thick and choking. She was breathing hard, little gasping sounds like a boxer swinging wild punches. Knowing the end was already written, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because the truth, raw, ugly, and undeniable, was finally standing there, exposed, trembling, defeated. Without another word, I stepped away from the door, turned off the lights, went to bed, let her scream, let her cry, let her curse the sky. It wasn't my cage anymore. I wasn't locked inside her games. By morning, she would be gone, and I would be standing in a life that, for the first time in years, belonged only to me. The morning broke without ceremony. No dramatic music. No soaring feeling of victory. Just sunlight leaking through the cheap blinds of my apartment, the distant sound of a garbage truck rumbling down the street, and a sharp, clean silence filling every corner of the room. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just breathing. Melissa was gone. No texts, no calls, no desperate knocks on the door. She had finally understood, not because I yelled, not because I begged, but because I did the one thing she couldn't survive. I ignored her. True power isn't about control. It's about indifference. And indifference is something she could never conquer. I got dressed slowly, deliberately. Simple jeans, a black t-shirt, comfortable sneakers. Nothing flashy. Nothing pretending to be something it wasn't. I stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The world smelled new, clean. A few drops of rain still clung to the trees, glittering like broken glass in the sun. For the first time in longer than I cared to admit, I felt weightless. Not happy. Not sad. Something deeper. Unburdened. I walked down the block to a diner I had passed 100 times but never entered. Ordered coffee. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Sat by the window watching the city wake up without me needing to rush into it, chase it, apologize to it. Halfway through my meal, I caught my reflection in the glass. Not the man she molded. Not the fool she played. Just me. Stronger. Sharper. Real. I didn't regret it, any of it. Not meeting her. Not loving her. Not even the nights I spent wondering what I had done wrong. Because the truth was, the betrayal wasn't my failure. It was hers. Her failure to recognize real loyalty. Her failure to build something instead of burn everything down the moment it stopped serving her ego. And my greatest mistake wasn't trusting her. It was thinking someone like her could ever deserve that trust. People think heartbreak feels like a stab wound. It doesn't. It feels like erosion. Slow. Patient. Ruthless. And by the time you notice how much ground you've lost, it's almost too late. Almost. But not this time. Not for me. I paid the bill, left a tip big enough to make the waitress do a double take, and stepped back outside. No backward glances. No invisible chains pulling me toward the past. No unfinished conversations echoing in my head. Melissa would go on, I was sure. She would find someone else to dazzle, to feed off, to use until there was nothing left but an empty shell wondering where it all went wrong. But I wouldn't be there to see it. I wouldn't waste another second mourning someone who had never once mourned the pieces of me she casually shattered. Somewhere ahead, there was a life waiting for me that didn't revolve around being enough for someone who was never enough for herself. A better life. A real life. Mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't just want it. I was ready for it. So I walked toward it, no fear, no shame, no more chains, and I didn't look back. Not even once.